Oh, hey everyone, it's Rexer here. I just want to say there's only one show better than the Rexer show, and that's Glen's Retro Show. And you know how I describe his show in one word?
Excellent.
Boy, it sure is pretty cool having these full-size arcade machines, but they do take up a lot of room.
Holy shit! Ow.
End of line.
Hey, Glen, what are you doing in my game? Listen, you gotta stay out of my way. I gotta go save my girlfriend, Pauline. I wish I could tell you, Jumpman. I don't know, this type of stuff seems to happen to me all the time. How you doing? So, Glen, what were you talking to Pauline about there a moment ago? Hey, Jumpman, no worries. She was just saying how she liked my hat. How you doing? Glen, I'm telling you right now, you better stay away from my girlfriend, Pauline. Jumpman, relax, dude. We're just friends. How you doing? Okay, Glenda, I see what you're after. Not this time. Okay, at least I'm on the final stage. I gotta get out of here. This Jumpman's got a few bits loose. Hey, Jumpman, what are you doing with that hammer, buddy? Come a little bit closer, Glen. Let me show you. I'm good. This is gonna hurt. Instant transmission, go. At last, I'm here first. Three's the crowd, Glen. You need to go.
Okay, we're gonna just shrink you down a little bit. There's a little too much power with you, Donkey Kong.
Oh no, Glen, what have you done? I'll be back.
Glen, you are a badass! Hi everybody, thank you for joining me on today's edition of Glen's Retro Show. Today we're going to be looking at a little project that hopefully I'll be able to offer to all of you if you're interested. It's basically a mini arcade that you can pretty much put together little kits and make your own little mini arcade machines. It's been part of my dream for a long time to be able to offer things like this. You know, I've been making them for a long time personally, either taking someone else's machine like a Super Impulse Tiny Arcade and converting that into a Raspberry Pi, or 3D printing machines, but it's pretty much just been for myself as a hobby and showing other people how I did it, and maybe you can do it on your own. But it would be kind of nice to offer little kits that you guys can kind of just pick up, put together like Legos and stuff like that, and make your own. So I've had a little project I've wanted to do for a long time, a machine I've wanted for a very long time, but of course it hasn't been offered yet, and I can't offer it myself. This is just my personal build, but maybe you could do something yourselves if you determine that, yeah, Glenn, I want you to do something like this so we can try and make our own. So today I made my own little Donkey Kong. So that's what we're going to look at today on Glen's Retro Show, how I made this, and should I offer something like this in a kit form that you can make yourself. Again, it wouldn't be a Donkey Kong kit with decals because, you know, Nintendo's not going to allow that. But maybe you can make your own type of a little mini arcade. So let's see what was involved in making this, and let me know in the comments down below if this is something you would want me to offer a kit like this that you can purchase and kind of make your own. Let's get started. Okay, so here's pretty much all you would need. You can see all the parts here are, for the most part, 3D printed. Obviously, there's a screen and micro switches and speakers and amplifiers that are not. But the actual case itself is all 3D printed, and obviously some plexiglass being used. And again, this was all made possible because of one of my very good friends, Gary Campbell. Gary has done projects with me in the past. He's been working with me on my arcade game table. And this is one project that he spent a lot of time on, and I think he really knocked it out of the park with making a kit that could be easy to assemble and be used for, you know, multitude of different little arcade gaming units. And as you're going to see, it assembles very, very easy. So my hat's off once again to my buddy Gary Campbell for his hard work here. Well, here's the first part you're going to need, which is just like if you're putting together an arcade 1-up or any other arcade type of machine. You're going to start with one of the side panels. As you can see here, the side panel is 3D printed, and all of these slots are pre-done for all the components to slide into. There's really only a few screws on the back that have been needed to hold it together. And I just put some aluminum foil on the top where the light-up marquee is going to be, because this does have a light-up marquee, which really adds to the effect of the machine. And you can see there is just a small piece of plexiglass. Here is the marquee itself. It is just a piece of plexiglass with a regular paper-based sticky paper being used on there, and two 3D printed parts to hold the marquee in place. But the decal is just, I printed on a regular inkjet printer. I think a laser printer would have done a much better job, but again, for here, it worked out pretty well. And as you can see, everything here is designed to simply sit and slide in place. So right up here on the top, in between the aluminum foil and the rest of the machine, there's a couple of slots, and you just press this in place, and it'll hold. I mean, it's not going to sit perfectly. It won't do that until it's all sealed up with both sides. But you can see it just holds itself up pretty well. And then here is a small piece of plexiglass, which I, again, printed on paper. The marquee, or the bezel, for around the screen. And again, a small 3D part to hold this screen in place. And you can see everything's, the tolerances are very, very good that Gary did here. Again, when you're 3D printing, you'd have to have a knack for the tolerances. And Gary spent a lot of time here to get everything just pretty much perfect. So you just slide these parts right in. And it does go in a certain way because one side has a longer part, which will hide behind the joystick. But you can see very easy how it slots in, and it holds in place, just like you can see right here. So now we come to the controller. And again, this is all 3D printed. There are a total of, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7 micro switches. The joystick itself is also 3D printed. The shaft is 3D printed. But inside the shaft, you put in a small nail to give it more strength. And Gary, again, designed from scratch this joystick. He uses 4 micro switches, and then 1 micro switch for each one of the buttons. So we have our cable here, and we use silicone wires just because they're very easy to bend and flex. And once again, it's just going to slide right into place. And we do have plans to make, again, dual joysticks, trackballs, spinners, pretty much everything miniaturized for this little cabinet. Now here is the iconic speaker area. You can see right here we put a small piece of plastic to cover the grill. We didn't have a small speaker to put in there. We had other ones, so we put it on the back. But there's no reason why you couldn't put a small speaker right in front if you wanted to. But we didn't have one, so we put a small little black stopper in there just to make it so it wasn't light bleeding through there. And once again, it's going to go right below the joystick, and it's going to just sit right in place. And again, everything's going to be loose right now because it will not be completely tight until both sides are attached. Next is the coin door, and both coin doors do depress. Each coin door will add credit for player 1 or player 2. Of course, you can make them do other things, but that's how we set these up. So, again, there's a connector on it, and we're going to push it right into space right here, and it'll lock into the bottom groove and the front groove. And it helps hold everything in place. Again, not solid just yet, but it will be. You can see all the connectors have a quick connector on them. This way you can make changes fairly easily. Next is our screen. Now this is an IPS, I think it's a 4.3 inch IPS screen. It's a beautiful screen. And on the back, we end up using a Raspberry Pi 3A just because of the power requirements. We're going to try and make our own power supply, but we just used the Adafruit power supply, and it just wasn't enough to really supply the 3B. But the 3A is more than adequate for this game. And right now, we're just going onto the GPIO pins. Everything's marked, which pins are being used. And again, the screen is a beautiful screen. We have a small little right angle power connector. And you can see right here, where I just pointed to, it says top. So you know that that's going to face the top of your machine. And the screen is actually two parts. The bezel around the screen is two pieces to hold it in place. And it just basically slides right in. No other screws needed. The Raspberry Pi, however, does screw into the back of that bezel to hold it all in place. Now here's just a small little black spacer. It's going to go right above the screen. And it just helps keep light out from the back and just creates the illusion, once again, that's an arcade machine. And it's all dark inside where the screen is. Now here comes the fun part. Here's the back panel where we have our speaker, our micro SD card slot. It's spring loaded. You can see it goes in and goes out. And the volume control and the amp for the unit. So on the back here we see that we have a extender cable. It's not necessary. You can actually plug the SD card right into the back of the Pi, but we figured why not. Now initially I was going to put it out on top like this, but I didn't like how that was going, so I swapped it a little bit. So I have the SD card cable actually going between the screen and the motherboard of the Raspberry Pi. It's going in between the two, and it's just bent right around just to keep it out of the way of the screen, because the screen, as you can see, is that gold piece, that gold cable goes over top. So it's bent, but it's a flex cable. It should be completely fine, and so far in all playing, it has been. I've been using these cables for a long time. They're very flexible. It makes it a little more cumbersome now with more wires than before. But again, this is a prototype, so things can always change in the future to make it more simple. But again, we're just going to put the screen in its slot like so. And just for temporarily, we'll get the back speaker area just put to the side for the moment. We're not going to put that on yet. But since the SD card is attached to it, we put it there. And we're using a standard right angle little phono jack to get the sound. Again, if we do decide to make this, it'll be probably more integrated with easier ways to connect versus I'm doing it like here. Again, this connects very easily, but it's more cables, more parts, more cost. We want to try and keep this as cheap as possible. The motto for us is always arcade quality without the arcade price, and we want to do that for here as well, if we can do it at all. And here is our other panel. You can see it's basically a mirror of the other one, and I've already put a decal on this one. Again, it's just a regular inkjet paper, glossy paper, nothing special. You could probably do better paper. But this is what's going to probably take you the most time, is just to make sure all the parts are lined up with the grooves, because again, they're not super rigid. They flex a little bit until you put it all together. So you have to make sure the screen's in the right spot, the joystick's in the right spot. But it's just moving around with your fingers for a few seconds, and they should go right into their slots, and you press down on the top, and then you still have to be careful because it's not locked in place yet. The top, middle, and bottom panel is what's going to really lock this thing in place and make it solid. And here is one. This is the U one. Now I originally put it in with the solid part facing outward, but it actually goes the other way. So we're going to put it in this way, and the reason we're doing that is the solid part will keep the control panel more secure. Gary said when I had it the other way, he said you could do it that way, but it was really designed to give more strength for where the controller is. So just to make sure the cables are, like I'm doing right here, in front of it, and just slide this in place. Now, again, what Gary did here, which is really, really ingenious, is just slide in. It's like almost like little triangles. So it's grooved in, and it kind of locks in place. So Gary, again, spent a lot of time designing this to where you don't need screws or lots of different things. The screws in the back, obviously, but these just slide in place. And again, the tolerances are perfect. It just slides in very smooth and holds it in place. Now, when you do put this in place, it does give a little support, but until you put the top and bottom piece in, you can still make it fall apart on yourself. So you have to be very, very careful still at this point. Make sure you're holding it nice and tight until you get all the top and the bottom ones in place. And just again, make sure your cables aren't pinched. And again, since it's open on one side, you can move cables in and out. And my cable management skills have never been very good. As long as it's in there and you can't see it, I've always been fine. I know a lot of people are really, really good at cable management. That's not me. But as long as you're not pinching anything, there's plenty of room in this machine, so there's no worries about the cables. Now here's the bottom. This is actually two separate pieces already screwed together, and that's where the battery's going to go, in that little slot in the top. But again, he did a really nice job. He printed the bottom in the black to make it look like the arcade machine. And you can see once again, it's like a V groove. It slides in very smooth, but now it's giving some strength to the machine. Just had to move a cable out of the way and push it a little bit more. And that's it. So now I'm going to try and lift it up a little bit. Again, you still have to be careful because the screen up top is just being held in loosely until you put that top piece in. But you can see how quickly it's been going together. Not very difficult to do. The hardest part is going to be always, wiring up the Raspberry Pi. We did it with individual cables right now, but in the future it'll probably be just one cable. And once you're sure everything's good, here is the top. Again, I put a piece of aluminum foil just to help reflect the LEDs. And both sides have V grooves once again, so it slides in very easily.
That's what she said?
That's what she said, I know. But it slides in very easily. As long as you get the grooves hooked up right. And that's it. You see how easy, one finger pushed it right in. And now it builds some of the strength. Now here is the LEDs for the backlight. Once again, some aluminum foil to help reflect the light. And you need a small little resistor for each one of the LEDs. And again, it's just going to slide. Look at that. Just slides right in. That's it. So at this point, the unit is a little more secure, a little more stable, easier to handle. But again, still not screwed in. The back screws what really anchors everything together. But you can see it's pretty much all together. Now it's really just make sure your cables are connected and working properly. So I'm going to just make sure once again that my cables are not jammed or smashed anywhere. I think the first thing I'll hook up right here is once I get everything out of the way here, that's for the battery pack at the bottom there. But we're just going to make sure again we can get all the cables, nothing's knotted or going to be impacted when we start closing up the unit. Once again, I know a lot of people are better at cable management than me, but to me that was good enough. So I think the first thing I'll hook up here is the actual backlight LEDs. And you see it's a small little connector, it's just 3 wires. Actually it's 2 wires, just power and ground. And just connect it like this. I'm an old man, my eyes aren't the best. There we go. And again, just make sure it's out of the way. The wire right now is probably a little bit long.
That's what she said.
But again, this is a prototype. This is not one that's been taken and built a few times. This is pretty much one of the first ones been done. The next thing hooking up here is the controller, the joysticks. Again, the future is to make this removable, so where we can put in 1 joystick, 2 joysticks, a spinner, a trackball, all different kinds of little controllers, which will really make these machines really shine. And again, it's just a simple press together. You get a little click, and your joystick is now set. The next thing is the coin doors at the bottom. Again, we use the coin doors for your inserting coins. You also use it to escape a game. You press one of the coin doors and a button, but again, simple click, and that is now connected. The next thing we're going to hook up here is the amplifier for the speaker. Now this one actually had a different connector on it, but the connector broke on me. It was my own fault. So I just took it off and I used just regular pins, push pins. But normally this would be, again, a zero insertion force type of connector. But for now, this will work for me just fine. Again, I have both pins marked where they have to go. One's ground and one is voltage, because this is just supplying the power. The headphone jack is supplying the actual sound effects, which we hooked up earlier. That's in good and tight. And again, everything here is removable. That's the key. You want to be able to put it together, and necessarily take it apart fairly easily, but still be able to put it back together, again, fairly easily. That's the key. Now, one thing I did forget to do earlier, which was to actually, on the back of the speaker board, you can see there, I'm sorry, below it, is the power unit. You can see right here, this is the power unit, and there's 2 USB connectors on here. And the power unit is just an Adafruit 1000C, which only has 1 amp of power, so that's why we had to go with a smaller Raspberry Pi. But before I put everything in, I probably should have connected this. Now, the Raspberry Pi A has only 1 USB port. Again, I'm able to get it in fairly easily because of that U bracket, but it would probably been even easier if I did it before I put everything together. Now, if you put in a Raspberry Pi 3, or we're hoping even do a Raspberry Pi 4, if you can make a strong enough power unit, both those connectors would be connected. but right now only one of them will be connected. And it's only really needed for a second controller port or a keyboard if you wanted to put that on there. For the most part, that USB won't be used. We just have to, again, make sure we don't entangle our wires, which of course Glen doesn't always pay attention to at first, but you can see I'm doing it now. Let's put that to the side. Again, there's plenty of room in the bottom here. There's a ton of room down here. So here's the connector that goes to the Raspberry Pi, and we're going to connect that to the power board. Again, just make sure all the wires are out of the way. Silicone wires are really, really good. They're very flexible. They don't break. We still don't want to pinch them. So you can see right here, the Adafruit has a regular Type A connector on it. And here is a small battery pack. And you can see right in the bottom of the Donkey Kong cabinet here is a slot for a battery pack. So we're just going to slide that in place. Again, the tolerances, Gary did it very, very well. We're going to slide that right in. And then on the Adafruit 1000C, there was a spot there for a battery connector and the regular USB connector for power. So this will basically give power to the Raspberry Pi once I connect this. Again, we're hoping to make our own because that's not the most powerful. Connect the battery to the back, and you can see there's an on-off switch at the top and a micro USB charging port below that, and then the two USB connectors below that. Only the one on the left is active, the other one is not active. Now I could very simply put in a very small USB hub to make both ports active, and I do have one around here somewhere, but I didn't put it in this build. But I may put a Raspberry Pi 3 in at some point, so I didn't really mind. And again, I'm probably not even going to use those USB ports. And you can see it fits in very nice and snug. It'll fit right in there. And basically all you need to do at this point is put in some good old screws. And these are just small 3M screws. And each one of these sections uses 4. Now, in a new version we've done, the back panel is one large panel. One of the reasons we made it a bit smaller is the 3D printer I have is a 210 by 205 build area, and this thing just would fit on it. So Gary was trying to make it easier for me, even though he actually printed these for me ahead of schedule. But I do want to print a couple of my own, and it would make it easier for me to print these with the smaller parts. But in the future one, it would just probably be one large back plane with maybe 6 screws. Here we're using 2, 4, 6, 8, I believe. Actually 12. I'm not good at math either. So it'll be 12 versus 6, which will probably be in the final version. But I do like how if there's an issue, I can just take out the power module or the speaker module or the backlight module without having to take apart the whole back panel. But again, it's just semantics. Last but not least is the backlight panel. Again, we put a little piece of aluminum foil to reflect as much light as possible, and of course, the Glen's Retro Show logo with me, Cole, and blue. Okay, we have now completed the build. Again, with the fantastic work of Gary Campbell, my friend, and he did a beautiful job. This thing looks like a small Donkey Kong cabinet. So I'm really happy how this turned out. Again, this is pretty much completely 3D printed. Obviously we need a screen, a couple of micro switches, a battery pack, of course the Raspberry Pi itself. And again, you can use Raspberry Pi 3A or B. I'm using a 3A in here just because of power constraints. But pretty much everything else here is 3D printed and some plexiglass and printing some labels. So one of the things I really do like about this out of everything, believe it or not, is the little barrel we did here for the volume, which is kind of neat. It's one of the Duck Kong's little barrels. We turned it into a knob here on the back of the unit. So just little touches like that. Now, obviously, I couldn't sell something like this. It's, you know, it's Nintendo's property. Nintendo would go absolutely nuts if we sold something like this. However, you know, I do a lot of these little projects. I do a lot of these builds, and people ask me all the time, Glenn, can you make me one? Can you make me one? And honestly, I just don't have the time for myself to make something like these. I mean, this takes hours and hours to print. However, if there's something like this you do want to do, obviously not without Donkey Kong, just a regular little micro cabinet, something you want to put next to like a New Wave Toys cabinet. And I love New Wave Toys. This is no replacement for New Wave. They make fantastic machines. But maybe you want to make a machine that they don't have out yet and you want to make your own. Put a comment down below. Give me a 1 for yes, Glenn, you know, I want you to release something like this so I can build my own, or no, Glenn, no need, no, I don't want it. But leave me some comments down below and like and share the video so I can see if people are interested in maybe selling kits with generic cabinets. You know, you can put your own artwork on it. We are planning on making different controllers for this. Obviously, it's a joystick with a couple of buttons on here. We do want to make one with dual joysticks, sort of like Robotrons and Battlezone. You can play Crazy Climber, Trackball for games like, you know, Marble Madness, Millipede, stuff like that, and Spinner, you know, of course, your Pong and your breakout style games. So we'll have a little plans for that, but should we even bother? Would you be interested in purchasing kits like this? Again, it wouldn't come with any ROMs. That's illegal. Couldn't do anything like that. And it wouldn't come with this type of artwork. We'll put some generic artwork in there. But a 3D printed or a case, something like this, maybe out of wood or plastic being made, would you be interested in having your own and making your own little mini case? You could put next to your New Wave Toys on your shelf and have a bunch of machines lined up across. Leave me a comment down below, and also if you could like, share, and subscribe, of course, I'd really appreciate it. I hit a milestone just recently. I have 1 million plus views on my channel, which I think is fantastic. So what a better way to celebrate than with the little Donkey Kong cabinet. And you know, I might make another one of these with Popeye on it and radar scope, because that was pretty much the same case that they made out of here. But I'm really happy how this came out. It plays very, very well, especially with the joystick here. It's a 3D printed joystick with some micro switches. We did put a nail in the center of the joystick there to make it a little more sturdy, and it seems to be working out pretty well. So that's really it for this video. So if you did like it, again, please like, share, subscribe, please tell your friends, and leave me a comment down below on what you think about this little mini arcade. Would you like to build one yourself? Would you like a kit being offered to you? Let me know. So that's it for this video, everyone. I really appreciate taking the time out of your day to watch it. And remember, no matter what you do or what game you play, just remember to game on.
Don't think we're done yet.
What the? Ah!
Tiny Arcade fan page. Remember, don't admire people too much. They'll disappoint you.
Sit, Blue Blue, sit.
And you are next.
Good dog.
Mr. Arcade, get him out of here! It's playing Donkey Kong!
You like Donkey Kong, eh? Okay, big fella. It's the official tabletop version of Donkey Kong, and it looks, plays, and sounds the same. It even has different screens as you get higher. And even more important, you can take Donkey Kong home.
Official Donkey Kong, the arcade game you can take home with you from Coleco.